Hello and welcome to this video. We were continuing the first chapter of your geography, that is resources and development. In last video we discussed up to the classification of resources, and in this video we will discuss about development of resources. Let's start it. Indiscriminate use of resources has led to many problems like depletion of resources for satisfying the greed of few individuals, accumulation of resources in few hands, which in turn divide the society into two segments, that is, haves and have nots, or rich and poor. It means that the indiscriminatory use of resources or the indiscriminatory exploitation of resources. Well, what is the meaning of indiscriminatory use or indiscriminatory exploitation of resources? That is the question. So, the answer to that is indiscriminatory exploitation means equal exploitation, or if he is exploiting it, why not me? If she is exploiting it, why should I stand back? So that is indiscriminatory exploitation of resources. Means he is exploiting, means I will also exploit it. He is fulfilling his greed, means I too will fulfill my greed. We never focus on our need, how much we need to satisfy our needs. That is not important to us. What important to us, that how much we can possess, how much we need, that is not our concern. Rather, how much we can, that is our concern, and that is a serious concern. We need to think about it, because the equal exploitation of resources by each and every individual, or the indiscriminatory exploitation of resources, leads to depletion of resources. Means the resources are getting reduced or getting depleted day by day. Second, accumulation of resource remaining in fewer hands. Remember, few videos back we discussed a question that whether resources are free gift of nature, right? And the answer to that is no, absolutely not. Resources are not free gift of nature. Although natural resources that are available in the nature freely, abundantly, amply, but still resources are not free gift of nature. Nothing in the world is free. Nothing. Everything has some cost, whether cultural cost or social cost or environmental cost or economical cost, but it has some cost. Likewise, the resources available in the environment has some cost, and we exploit the resources at the cost of our environment. When we exploit the resources, we simultaneously damage our environment. We simultaneously creating environmental concerns, environmental problems, environmental hazards. So we always develop, or we always exploit resources which is obviously necessary for development, but we exploit it, or we are developing at the cost of our environment. Likewise, when we talk about the economical value of resources, obviously it has some economical value. Like we purchase a chair is a resource because it satisfies our need, but we have to pay money to acquire a chair. So whenever there is acquisition of resources, obviously if we do not look after our need and we only focus on greed, that how much someone can possess. He has two chairs in his house, then I will acquire 8, although I don't need 8. That is the problem. He has two TVs in his house, I will purchase 5, even if I don't require 5 TVs in my house. That is the problem. So when we focus on our greed to acquire resources or to possess resources, it leads to accumulation of resources in fewer hands. And who are the few people? Obviously the rich section of the society who have more money. So when we focus on our greed, the accumulation of resource happen to in fewer hand, and it create division in the society between haves and have not, or rich and poor, those who can afford it and those who cannot afford it. There is a sharp division between them, or who have more resource, who have not more resource, or who are rich and who are poor. So when the accumulation of resource happens to fewer hand, then it divide the society into two different segment. Indiscriminate exploitation of resource has led to global ecological crises such as global warming, ozone layer depletion, environmental pollution, and land degradation. Just before few minutes we already discussed that the rate of our development, the pace of our development, the resources we are acquiring has some cost, and most of the time we acquire those resources or we develop at the cost of our environment, because we need resources to fulfill our need. And when we exploit the natural resources, we create a disbalance in the balanced environment which is designed balancedly by the nature. We create disbalance in it, and that led to problems like global warming, ozone layer depletion, environmental pollution, and land degradation. In order to minimize those problems, we need an equitable distribution of resources, which is very much essential at this time. And an equitable distribution of resource can lead to sustained quality of life as well as global peace. So what is the meaning of equitable distribution of resources? You can see here in the picture that here three persons are there. Everyone is provided with equal access to the resource. That is, the first person is provided with one stand, second person is provided with one stand, and third person is provided with one stand. But the three persons are not equal. The first person is very taller who can reach to the target resource very easily. The second person is, or the second person have something less, that is his height or her height, so he needs some extra strength, he needs some extra input to reach to the resource. And the third person is extremely poor, third person is extremely in need of extra resource to reach to the target resource. So this is not equitable distribution of resource where each one is provided with equal amount of resource. They all obviously do not need equal resource. The first person is already have his height. The second person needs some extra, and the third person need obviously even more than the second person. So in next picture you can clearly see that the third person is provided with extra inputs to reach its resource, and then only the three person can equally access to the target resource. So picture B is obviously indicating equitable distribution of resource, and picture A is indiscriminatory exploitation or inequitable distribution of resource. And how can we adopt more equitable distribution of resource? Through resource planning. And that is why we need resource planning, which is very much essential for sustainable existence of life. We have to think about each and every form of life, and we have to think about everyone equally. We cannot prioritize rich people more compared to poor, and it not only include human beings, it include all the form of life. Like when we exploit a forest, we only think about humans need. What about animal inhabited in that forest? We never concerned about that. When we put fire to somewhere, we never think about what consequences it may have upon microorganisms living in that place. We only think about humans benefit, humans need. Even that is not sustainable development. So sustainable development means thinking and concerning about each and every form of life and each and every person and every form of life equally. Sustainable existence is a component of sustainable development, and sustainable existence is very much necessary for sustainable development. Let's discuss about the concept sustainable development. Sustainable development or sustainable economic development means development should take place without damaging the environment, and development in the present should not compromise with the needs of future generations. We already discussed that we are developing at the cost of our environment. So sustainable development means not damaging the environment much. We cannot say like we will not hamper the nature or we will not hamper the environment at all. Development cannot be possible without hampering the environment, because everything has a cost, and development has the cost of environmental degradation. So we obviously cannot say that we totally can erase or we totally regulate the environmental degradation, but obviously we can minimize its intensity, we can minimize the amount of degradation, or we can minimize the damage. And second is development of present should not compromise with the needs of future generation. Well, in last videos we discussed that few resources are exhaustible resource. That means that there is a high chance of running out of those resources over longer period of time. So it is our responsibility to not exhaust the resource by fulfilling our needs only, rather to conserve some so that future generation also get a chance to use those resources. So the concept of sustainable development was first adopted in Earth Summit 1992, which was held in Rio de Janeiro. Let's discuss about that. Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit 1992. In June 1992, more than 100 heads of state met in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. It is the first international Earth Summit. So, the Earth Summit of 1992 was the first international Earth Summit where 100 different nations met together in Rio de Janeiro of Brazil in order to discuss urgent problems of environmental protection and socio-economic development at global level. The assembled leaders signed a declaration on global climatic change and biological diversity. The Rio Convention endorsed the global forest principle and adopted Agenda 21 for achieving sustainable development by 21st century. So, in the Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit of 1992, the global leader they signed a declaration on global climatic change and biological diversity, and they emphasis on global forest principles and adopted Agenda 21 for what? For achieving sustainable development in 21st century. So now let's discuss about Agenda 21. What was Agenda 21? It is the declaration signed by world leaders in 1992 at the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, or UNCED, which took place at Rio de Janeiro of Brazil. It aims at achieving global sustainable development. So, what is the main aim of Agenda 21? Its main aim is to achieve global sustainable development, not sustainable development for any particular local area, rather it focused on sustainable development at a global level. It is an agenda to combat environmental damage, poverty, diseases through global cooperation on common interest, mutual needs, and shared responsibility. So how they targeted to achieve sustainable development globally? By reducing the environmental damage, reducing poverty, reducing diseases through global cooperation on common interest and mutual needs and shared responsibility by different nations. For example, in current situation we are facing covid-19. We are facing the covid pandemic situation, and you must have come across newses where the global or international bodies or international countries are concerning about other countries problem, and they are extending their helping hand to the needy country in order to conquer the pandemic situation. That is the meaning of global cooperation. One major objective of the Agenda 21 is that every local government should draw its own local Agenda 21. And one of the most important feature of Agenda 21 was, or important objective of Agenda 21 was, that every local government was free to draw their own Agenda 21 on the basis of needs of their locality, and they are not compelled to follow the global agenda. Maximum of the time the theoretical situation is far more different from the practical situation, like whether it's a education policy or a health policy or any decision that is taken at the higher level is far more different compared to the ground level or the grassroots level problem. It is more a theoretical, or it seems more hypothetical when we compare that plan or that policy to the grassroots level, to extremely remote level, to extremely rural level, because obviously place to place people, their lifestyle, their economical condition, their need, their necessity differ from each other. So that difference was given priority at Rio de Janeiro's Earth Summit, and every government was allowed, every government was recommended to draw, to formulate their own Agenda 21 to achieve sustainable development by 21st century. So, Agenda 21 was adopted in Rio de Janeiro's Earth Summit 1992 in order to achieve sustainable development. And sustainable development is the much needed thing of the hour. We need to think about each and every form of life in order to develop sustainability, in order to bring harmony between communities and kingdoms. That's all about this video. Thank you.